Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Can you hear a fan blowing in the background?
No.
Cool.
Oh, did you see the post I made on Slack?
I went nuts. That guy is, I mean, he better be careful. He's a little crazy. Man, that was wild for Oklahoma. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it was really funny. It
Yeah.
was really funny.
I wonder who's actually doing it for him, you know?
I don't know. Maybe he's using Fiverr.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy. No question about it. Thanks for sharing that. I love stuff like that.
You're welcome.
I think you could be pretty crazy without going that crazy. You know, like the guys in the bathtub. No, I don't think so. But otherwise, I thought it was pretty amazing.
It was pretty clever.
Yeah. Well, like you know, people are talking about it, so that's kind of cool. You know,
Hmm.
they're posting. Hey, check out this this thingy here. All right. Hey, Mr. Ben. How are you, Ben?
Hey,
Oh,
everybody.
Ben.
How are you?
Good, man. We're just getting organized here. Will be a couple more minutes, I think.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right, you doing all right?
Yeah, yeah. I'll take the time to organize myself because.
There you go. I'm proud of you, son. We had a speaker on Tuesday. The guy sent me how to phonetically pronounce his name. He had all these links that he wanted me to research and be aware of that he was using in his talk. It was just the most thorough preparation I've ever seen in my life. And I have to hand it to him. He is very successful, and I can understand why in that case. Right.
I'm going to take note on that because I like to follow good examples.
Yeah.
But we'll set the bar a little bit lower today.
Yeah.
Just to start. Okay.
No problem at all. I got it. I have a dumb question for anybody who wants to answer this. My settings on Zoom, I've got it set where it can show up to 49 participants in gallery view, but it will not show me more than 6 no matter what I do. Anybody have any feel for that, why that would be? Very strange. So I can only see, including myself, 5 other people, well, including myself 6, but 5 other people. And even when there's like 25 people on the call, I can't see them. And I guess I'll have to reach out to customer service and ask them.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ben is doing his homework to get ready for this session.
Have you changed it from on your view to gallery?
Yeah, I'm on gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if so I just figured something out. So if I click on show non-video participants, everyone shows up. So that's what it was. I was hiding people whose video wasn't currently on. So that makes me feel a little less insane. I'm glad that thank you, Branson. I think that was you that made that wonderful suggestion.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, don't call me sir. I don't know how to act. Quandel, I found out that your wife and I serve on a board together.
Yes, yes.
Unbelievable. They went nuts at the Rural Center. You know, when I was sending your link to you guys got to buy these shirts. They're going, and all of a sudden, Peter putting it, that's so-and-so's husband. I went, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Who's your wife?
Alice. Alice
Oh,
Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben's on the board also. Ben's a big shot. He's I forget, they call you the large guy or at large or something like that. I don't know. Ben's at large.
It's
and,
a glorious title for a figurehead.
yeah. Yeah.
Pleasure meeting.
Yeah. So, but I had to laugh at that. I'm too stupid to look at last names and go, oh, that's Alice's husband. Are you Alice's husband? I could have asked that. Did I?
I don't
Yeah.
think there are that many of us in North Carolina.
Yeah.
No.
No, I don't think so. It's kind of like my last name. If there's another one in North Carolina, I just find that hard to believe is all I can say.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And Grant, please keep your eye peeled as more folks join, even though I have figured out my little problem here. And I'd like to take a second to introduce my friend and colleague, Ben Knight, fellow resident of wherever the hell we live, Pink Hill, Deep Run, Deep Doo-Doo, whatever you want to call it. But we're out here in the country. And Ben is a really good basketball player and a really good artist, in addition to other skills. And I think you'll enjoy what he has to say today. And I'm sure he'll leave time for questions. And so with that, let me introduce Ben Knight.
Thanks, Dennis. And thanks for having me back. I had a lot of fun talking about myself for an hour last time, so hopefully I don't get tired of it this time.
We're gluttons for punishment, Ben. What do we know, right?
My art gallery would be pretty upset with me if I didn't mention that I do have a show up right now at City Art in Greenville. So
Wow.
there's a bunch of other artists in the show.
Send me a link and we'll post it. We'll post it on our stuff so people know about it.
But got a bunch of new work up there, and there's a lot of great stuff in there. Local artists in it as well. So and also wanted to give you guys, let you know that I did, and I forgot to mention this last time, but before I go into like a little background, I did a TED Talk 2 years ago in Wilmington, and it's about creativity and entrepreneurship. It was I would say if you ever have the opportunity to do one, it's a tremendous amount of work, but it is a blast. But I check that out. It's just, if you do a TED search on my name or Google, it'll pop up, but it was a lot of fun and a great honor, but kind of relevant to what we're going to talk about today. Some of you may know my background a little bit, but I'll touch on that now. I am from Chicago, as you can probably tell, not from Eastern North Carolina. And I moved down here about 16 years ago to open a restaurant in Kinston with my wife, Vivian Howard, called Chef and the Farmer. And we opened that restaurant in 2006, and in 2012 we started working on a PBS show called A Chef's Life, which ran for 69 episodes, and then opened a second restaurant in Kinston called Boiler Room Oyster Bar, and a third restaurant in 2017 in Wilmington called Benny's Big Time Pizzeria. And as a side gig, I paint, which I always said I would do full time if I didn't have a restaurant to run. So, you know, my background, I went to college. I was an English major at Northwestern, and didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd always worked in restaurants on the side to earn money. And when I graduated, started working in a family business for a couple of years that was marketing based, and worked in restaurants on the side. And slowly but surely, it just kind of became something that I couldn't get out of. And
Couldn't get
I
out of
moved-
it as opposed to
I
wanting to
couldn't
do
get
it.
out of it. Yeah, that's still the same story. So, you know, it's one of those things, be careful what you wish for. But I moved from Chicago after college and working a couple years to New York to pursue painting as a career. And of course, in order to support myself, I worked in a restaurant, and that's where I met my wife. And neither of us had any business management experience or any entrepreneurial business experience in that way. Now, I had worked in a small business that was a family business that was entrepreneurial by nature, and we had started a small soup business out of our apartment in New York, where we catered soup to clients all over the city, which wasn't legal at the time. But you know, small potatoes kinds of startups. And it turned out that rather than opening a storefront in New York, we decided to move down to Kinston and open a storefront in North Carolina. And basically had no previous experience in building out a restaurant or starting a business or doing any sort of managerial work on that level. And so we had to figure it out and learn over time. You know, and that brings me to the biggest lesson I had in the first several years of opening Chef and the Farmer and starting a business with my wife, was really figuring out and defining what it is that we wanted to accomplish and what kind of business we wanted to run. And I think until we each figured that piece out for ourselves and together, it was extremely challenging. And so today, what I want to talk about was, you know, taking that initial step to really think about and define your values as an individual and how those are represented in your business, and your mission, which can change. And it can change over time as you change. But I think always needs to be clear, so that the team that you're working with has something to shoot for. So, you know, the first thing that I decided was important to me was to lead by example. And this was something that was instilled in me. As Dennis said, I played basketball a lot as a kid. And any of you that played
Eating
team
lunch yet, or-
sports.
Yeah, I just inhaled some pineapple.
Oh,
Please, everybody, please mute your microphone if you can. Thank you.
Leading by example is just part and parcel with I think being on a successful team sport, and in basketball in particular, it was a lesson that I really valued and served me well, and it was something that was the initial value that I brought to our business, and what you know, little things like, you know, it's a restaurant. You're the boss. If you ask everybody not to park in your parking lot and park in the employee lot, if you park in the front space in front of the building, that's not really leading by example in my book. And so, you know, I do a lot of thinking about things that are related to this concept of front row parking versus employee parking, and relating a lot of the decisions I make and a lot of the things that I do during the day related to those two concepts. And that's not for everybody. And you know, that could be growth limiting long term. But it is a value of mine, and something that I hold dear to the kind of business I like to run. So, that extends to cleaning the bathrooms in the restaurant. Hang on one second, guys. I'm sorry.
Somebody got in his parking space, I think.
No, they're having fun. They're having fun in there, but I didn't. Anyway. So, if I'm going to ask somebody to clean the bathroom, but nobody that I'm working with has ever seen me clean it, I don't believe that they're going to take it as seriously. And nor do I believe that they're going to do it the way that I would want it to be done. Early on, somebody said to me, nobody loves your baby like you do. And I think, for your first business or starting a business, an entrepreneurial business, that's a good thing and also a hard lesson to absorb. Because you can't walk around being angry at people all the time for not caring about your baby the way you do. That'll, probably shorten your lifespan and give you gray hair like I have prematurely. You have to decide those values. And this was number one for me. Just lead by example, and do the things that if you were an employee working in this company, that would make you feel like your boss cared about you and cared about the business, and made you want to put forth the extra effort. So that was number one for me. Number two was to have empathy and compassion for the people that I'm working with. And again, this was not always an easy thing. And understanding that people aren't going to bring 100% focus to their job every day, because we all have life. I mean, if we've learned anything from COVID in the last year, is that, if you have kids working at home and trying to be a teacher at the same time is challenging, and you're not going to be that great at both. And separating life from work is, I think, a cliche that is a little bit disrespectful to just the working experience people have in general. If you lose a family member and you come to work, you're not going to be able to separate that at the door. It's an unrealistic expectation. And so, that was a tough lesson for me to learn in terms of working with people. And so that's something that has changed over time in terms of another value that I have. And then, those are the two principal values that I really take to all the decisions I make regarding the business that I have. And those are things that I talk about a lot with our staff. And they extend to making mistakes, our approach to fixing issues, our approach to communicating together, how we do our financials, which is an open book situation, to the improvements to the facility, incorporating suggestions from staff. All those things are derivative of those two values. And for me, again, if I were working in a place and I have opinions, I like to share them, but not everybody does. But I would like my boss to constantly be asking me what I thought about this. We just got new shelves in here, and I asked everybody what they thought, and not everybody's going to be open about it, but I'm going to ask everybody what they think, and try to gain from them a kernel of truth and knowledge that I might not have had before. And those are the core principles. So moving moving to the next thing that I think is paramount with this concept of an authentic business, which is, what is the mission? And for us, when we first opened Chef and a Farmer, the mission seemed obvious. We wanted to do a farm to fork restaurant and source food locally and help sustain a local economy. And that's all great, but we didn't know what the hell that meant, or really the practical reality of that, right? And so, and I think this is a metaphor for how a lot of small businesses grow. And that is, you make a lot of mistakes, you do your best to fix them and recognize them as soon as possible, and you try to get a little better each day. And so, you know, in terms of our initial mission, we realized that was incomplete. It was incomplete in several ways. The first being, when you're serving food that's locally raised and sourced to an audience that's primarily local folks raised in a rural agricultural society that have been eating that way, or the family has been eating that way their whole lives, it's not special. That as a concept makes no difference to them, right? And you know, it's just another example of some, you know, big city idea coming to the country to try to tell people how to live. They're already doing it. And so, you know, it was an unsuccessful, really nothing more than a marketing gimmick for us when we opened. Although, you know, we did source things locally and we did try our best to grow that aspect and believed in that practice. It didn't mean anything to the people that were eating in the restaurant. And those people are important. And it really didn't mean anything to our staff. And so those are the two most important constituents in your business, your employees and your clients. And so if you're not listening to them, you're really going to have a hard time succeeding. So what did we do to fix this? You know, this was our mission. We wanted to be this beacon of local sustainable food and sourcing. And nobody we were serving it to and nobody we were working with really cared that much about that. How do we get them to care? So with the guests, number one, the food had to be really, really good. If people came back a second time and a third time, they began to notice that there was a huge difference in the quality of the food we were serving versus a lot of the other restaurants in the area. Now, it might have been a little bit more expensive. They noticed that too. But slowly but surely, the quality factor began to work its magic. And that allowed us to tell the story of why this was important to us. And I think, you know, it's not always going to be quality that's the bait or the hook, but you have to, I think, pay attention and figure out what it is about what you're doing that captures your guests or your client's attention, and what it is that makes your product or your service unique. And so for us, you know, it was the quality. Make no mistake about it. Now, how were we able to provide a quality plate of food? In a large part because of the ingredients we were sourcing were really good. And in a large part because my wife was really dedicated to her craft and getting better. And so, you know, that's what began to separate us. And then, you know, the second factor is this, you know, your staff. You know, how do you get the people you're working with to believe in your mission? People follow success. One thing that I've learned is that when you have a TV show, people listen, right? When you don't have a TV show, you can have a megaphone, but you're going to be talking to an empty room. And so the success of the restaurant was the most important factor to getting our team to buy in. Now, that doesn't mean everybody who started there bought in or stayed around or wound up believing in. But the more people came back and talked about the experience they had as guests, the more our staff saw the reaction, the more they ate our food, just like our guests, the more they tried craft beer instead of, just drinking Bud Light or new wines or cocktails that were creative, the more input they had in the whole experience, the more they bought in. All right. And for a restaurant, your biggest advertising component, your most important and your most sacred, is your staff. Right? They talk to everybody they know about their work, like we all do. And if they're talking about what a great place it is to work and you're a restaurant, you're going to get new customers. And if your staff understands what your mission is and believes in it, they're going to talk to your guests in a way that's believable. And when you start to make that connection real, you're moving towards the authentic experience. And for us, this little light bulb went on about 3 years in about how all these things played together and played in the sandbox together and played nicely together. And so, this concept of an authentic business, as I'm talking about it now, was not articulated in 2009. And it's still a moving part. But when I look back on it and reflect on it now, those are the key components and key ingredients that helped us build a successful business initially and allowed us to come up with the ideas to share that experience with the broader world, moving on to A Chef's Life on the PBS station, which was essentially about this experience that I'm talking about, which is, being a small business owner, having a family, and trying to create a life. And so, when that hit and people began to see in masses what that looked like, in an authentic way. And, back in 2012, you had Gordon Ramsay and No Reservations and a few other kinds of shows that did some things like this, but nothing was really shot like a documentary, and nothing was really shot as a serial show, as a documentary. And nothing was really quite the same in terms of the rawness and the authentic aspects of having a small business in a small town with a family. And so, again, what I've seen and learned from that and taken from is that people respond amazingly positive to being authentic, sharing your struggles, sharing your successes, and doing it in a way which is truthful. When people at this point in time, when they walk into our restaurant in Wilmington, they ask how my kids are. I've never met them, right? They ask how the restaurants are going. It's like they've known me for 10 years. And it's not an act. They've watched me grow up. They watched my kids grow up. They watched my wife grow up, and they care. That's why they're coming. And I can only guess that they care because they related to it. It meant something to them. and what we did was share who we were. And so that's been the magic and the power of it. You know, does it lead to, you know, Amazon financial success? Well, if you wanted to, it could. You know, if that's what your value is, if that's where you want to go with your business, sure. But you know, for us or for me, you know, just having the opportunities to continually work on what's important to me and what's important to our business, and being able to spend my days doing those things is has been an unbelievable reward. Having an opportunity to sit on a board with Dennis and your wife, and learn from, you know, people who have had all sorts of really interesting experiences. Those are wonderful opportunities. And so, you know, I think to me, that's what this journey about having a business has been about. All right. I did that a little quicker than I thought, but
It's okay. I want to jump in here.
questions.
Yeah, I want to jump in with a couple of things before the questions, and I promise I'll be quick. One of my major motivations for doing this program is really about what I call social mobility. North Carolina as a state is one of the worst places in the country for someone who is born poor to actually improve their lot. We're 49th out of 50, believe it or not, in that metric. And where I'm from, it's in the top 5. So I'm not used to this kind of thing. And one of the things that Ben just went through, I hope that you were listening very carefully. He shared experiences that he had as a kid, as somebody before, you know, from his family business or for things that he learned in basketball. These are the learnings, the lessons that we all need to share with our contacts and our connections. These are very, very critically important, because if no one ever told you and you didn't know, how the hell are you supposed to figure it out? They don't teach us stuff in school, right? So I think that's one of the lessons from Ben that I think is really, really important. And he's applying it in lots of different ways, as is his wife and his team. The other thing I wanted to, and I promise I'll shut up. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, so in about 2012 or 13, my wife and I started a business here. It was called Carolina Wild Muscadine Juice. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting things. We lost, we did not win in the end. But I do want to tell you that of all the people that we interacted with, Ben and Vivian threw out the welcome mat for us. They made special cocktails in their restaurant. They featured us on the TV show. It wasn't their fault we didn't make it. Let me put it that way. But the point I want to make about that is, be generous, be open. You never know what little thing you don't even think is a big deal makes all the difference for someone else who's coming up behind you or watching you. Ben talked about leading by example. I was taught that in the Army. I'm a, believe it or not, a career Army officer in the reserves. And that's the number one lesson they teach you. You know, if you're going to lead men or lead troops, you have to lead by example. So I just wanted to bring those 2 points home before we get into the questions. But Ben is really a treasure for all of us. And he inadvertently sometimes shares things that are really, really important. So I just wanted to underline. I don't mean to be rude,
Yeah.
but
That's like my bio for my artist statement is the importance of highlighting mistakes. So if it seems a little random, that's part and parcel with how I roll.
Okay, well, and let's open it up to questions. I know you have questions or thoughts. Please fire away.
I do have a question. Ben, this is Quandale. I know you stated, and it's based around something you stated about your business when things didn't go well as well as you anticipated. Like what was the factor that inspired you and your wife to continue on and grow instead of just saying, you know, pack it up and let's do something different?
You know, I wish I could point to one thing when I reflect on that time in my life. You know, the first couple of years were really hard, really hard, and it was too much for me. I mean, point blank, it was absolutely too much, and I became somebody I didn't enjoy being around as a result of the stress and the responsibility. I think, you know, in 2008 we had the Great Recession, and we had talked seriously about closing our doors in spring of that year. And on a whim, I said, you know, we had eaten in all these other restaurants around in the Triangle and, you know, everywhere. I'm like, you know, I just believed that what we were doing was as good as anywhere we were going to. And, you know, maybe I was crazy, but I believed it. And I believed what we were doing was special because I had never heard of a restaurant in a town like Kinston, like ours, in the whole country. You know, people talk about the French Laundry. Well, that's in Napa Valley. You know, it's a little different. And I don't think people really understand that. And so, you know, all these factors just led me to believe that this was something special, which, you know, again, it's your baby. And so I sent out an email to every food writer in the state and inviting them to come to the restaurant. And I got one reply. And that one reply was Greg Cox, who was the food critic for the News and Observer. And at that point, they had never done a review outside of the Triangle that was featured in the News and Observer lifestyle pages. And we were the first. And at that point, he reviewed us in that spring, that June. And we tied for the highest rating he had given at that point. And our business grew 20% that summer. And that really set us on the course. It really put my, you know, my wife's credibility on the map and started, you know, other people noticing. And that really helped propel her career and saved our business. But I think if I point to what it was that kept me going in that circumstance was I had this overwhelming sense of debt to my in-laws for providing this experience to us. And I still do. And I just, you know, until the bank account said zero and we couldn't get any more money from the bank, I was going to go. You know, I wasn't going to ask for money for my family. Well, I'm a little too stubborn for that, but you know, that's kind of, I just, you know, they were so proud of what we had been doing, and I just couldn't stop. And I think my wife felt that too.
Thank you. Thanks for the transparency as well.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Rachel and Dan.
Mm. Hi.
I did have a quick question because I've never really watched a lot of cooking shows, and until we were introduced to you, I wasn't familiar with it. And Dan and I are planning on starting Country Kitchen, which is a commercial food-based business. We're going to treat it like a business incubator to help other small businesses so that they can come in when they don't have space or if they're looking to expand. and a jobs builder to help them find reliable staff. And one of the questions I had was, when you're looking to build a team, what are some of the traits or qualities that really just kind of stand out to you when you're trying to build a team, and how do you make an inclusive environment?
They have to be able to dunk without taking a running start.
There's no substitute for talent, Dennis.
Or as my coach used to say, we're small, but we're slow.
I think I would have played well on your team.
Yeah.
Well, those are great questions, Rachel. And I think your idea sounds really admirable. I think just filling a big hole for people. I believe wholeheartedly that if more people started their own businesses on a more regular basis, if it was an easier thing to do, if it wasn't so challenging, if large business didn't work so hard to stomp out opportunities in real meaningful ways, we would all be a little bit better off, and life would be, we'd have some ownership, which, that really helps build community. And I feel like what you're doing is a really wonderful addition to helping build a community. That said, building a team, again, I want to pull from what Dennis said, because sometimes he just distills it so perfectly. My experience playing and coaching basketball was critical to my understanding of what a highly functional team looks like. Okay. And I think that's if you're gonna build a great team, you have to study first and foremost what a great team looks like and how they work together. For me, I relied on that experience from my basketball days. We were a very successful team. I think that helped. As I've gotten older, how I learned that team worked in that way isn't so applicable to the business world or to today's society. A lot of yelling and screaming just doesn't work anymore. So I started to read a lot of books on leadership and team building. And I started with, because I love basketball, I started with people I admired. So one of the best I read was a book by John Wooden, a UCLA basketball coach. And so, I started to pull lessons from that and kind of really identify the kind of people that I think would be valuable team members and team leaders, and the character that they demonstrated more so than experience. But again, I think for me, one of the biggest lessons is whether or not I like somebody. I know that it kind of goes against the grain, but if I don't like somebody, I'm gonna have a hard time working with them. I just am. And if I like somebody, it's gonna make it easier. It's going to make it easier to tolerate their mistakes. It's going to make it easier for them to tolerate mine. And it'll help us build a working friendship. And I think working friendships are really important. If you don't like somebody, it's just a challenge to sometimes even be in the same room. And I think it can be toxic. So I would encourage anybody starting a team to hire people that they think they like and could work with. You're not going to know their strengths right away. As a team leader, you're going to have to try to find work for them to do that plays to their strengths or maybe plays to your weaknesses.
To expand on that, the open book system you're using, was that something you started with, or you gradually brought in as you found a core team you could work with?
So it began as a management tool for us as we started to want to expand. There's a great company, I think I talked about them last time I spoke, called Zingerman's. And for you guys in particular, they have a thing called Zing Train, which is a really, really thoughtful, organized, and well put together company that does team building, all sorts of different consulting and training aspects, not just for the hospitality industry, but for businesses generally. And it started as a deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and has now grown to like an 80 or $100 million business, with all their core businesses being in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's a very fascinating story and a really fantastic company, and is the real deal. Like I took my team up there before we opened Benny's and had just a fantastic experience. So my open book philosophy is as a derivative of what I learned from them directly. It was not something we started with, but my experience is that when you have team members that are asking you about numbers, they've bought in, right? They're curious. They want to know how the business is doing. And people who want to know how the business is doing are valuable.
Thank you.
More questions, please.
I have a question. I do internet radio and digital media, and I found a problem with trying to compete against the bigger established companies, which a lot of times with me being an urban in the urban market, a lot of times the urban market is left out. How do I convince local Carolina businesses to advertise and allow me to tell their stories when you have bigger names like Pirate Talk or Henry Hinton that they will go to first before they will allow me, which, the urban market is a big capital spender, especially here in the United States, but especially around here. So a lot of times I wonder what I have to do to really get my hands into that market to really bring the content and the advertising together.
What's your show about, or what do you broadcast?
Well, we broadcast. What I do, I'm a music producer by trade and a graphic artist. So what we started doing was basically started talking about local events, local things around the Carolinas that kind of get missed on the news, whether it's about businesses. I'm a great coffee consumer, the new coffee houses, different things that we can talk about that brings attention to places. And then we have different shows like direct audio. Then we have a show called Nine Wings, where we basically eat wings and just talk about local current events that's going on around the area. And then we also play the music from a lot of the local artists who can't get on major radio because, that same market is kind of locked up in the same thing. So we give them an outlet, but now I'm trying to bring the local businesses to be the advertising behind the whole program.
And what have you had an opportunity to do some research on your audience numbers and demographics and things of that nature?
Yes, before COVID, we were going really, really strong. After COVID, everything kind of fell apart. Just because, closed down things and doing recording and being in close spaces was kind of, a no at the time. So now I'm getting the numbers back, and we're getting like sometimes up to 1,000 listeners a show. And we get a lot of shares and a lot of things that I have 5,000 friends on Facebook, and some of my tags have even got into the millions of shares from here in Eastern Carolina. So anything I tag, I also tag Eastern Carolina to the back of it, or Greenville, or whatever business that I'm dealing with, because I know I get that much retreat from the music end of it. So I'm now trying to take that and almost use it as how Mr. Beast has used to make himself, but do it now to build businesses.
Mr. Beast, my kids watch it all.
Yeah.
Watch Mr. Beast all the time, man. That's funny. You know, I don't know that much about digital marketing and you know, all of those different aspects. You know, I get a little bit from my kids. I do have a little bit of a marketing background. But you know, I think you know, I think to me what it sounds like you're trying to do is build up locally from the ground up.
Yes.
What you're doing, and you know, I feel like regardless, that's a long-term initiative. You know what I mean? Especially, I think, to what Dennis was saying about upward mobility in Eastern North Carolina, or North Carolina generally. I think, you know, a lot of that to me is related to how people share information. And I think some of it, you know, is cultural, like Southern, but I think some of it is also, you know, it's a little bit different than where I grew up in Chicago. And you know, I think it makes it more challenging in a lot of ways to get word out. Mr. Beast is like, you know, I mean, a lot of that is going around and throwing money at stuff, you know, like, to be truth be told, he's going around and just giving people a lot of money, and people watch that. And not everybody has, you know, that kind of funding to do those kinds of things. So I think, have you had some successes in getting some local businesses to
Yes,
sponsor shows?
we've sponsored events before with businesses. The Winterville Community Day, we did that for like 5 years. We did things in Greenville with ECU. We did Hip Hop Help for Health, where we showed the urban kids how to eat healthy, how to really work out, and we even did some things where we gave them money and we worked with them with songs to show them how to work out and put things together, because a lot of times, you know, they're not eating the right things. So sometimes just showing them the right things. And then we put them in with the intergenerational center that had an urban garden that they could go out and pick their own vegetables, and they taught them how to plant. So we do things like that. But we're trying to do it with more businesses, and even, you know, almost like a local PBS to get stories out. Because a lot of times now you have a lot of new businesses popping up, but no one's hearing about them because there's in the shuffle of everything else that's going on.
It's a tough time to start a business and get word out. People are just, you know, just starting to, it's like springtime for people getting out, you know. They're just going out again.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to something I said earlier. I'm a big believer in really paying attention to what was successful, you know, what seemed to catch the first couple of successes you've had in you know, building those marketing relationships. And that's tough with marketing because, you know, everybody's a little bit different. But I think, you know, you can get a core message out of what people responded to, and then, you know, putting together just a professional package. I think, you know, I get solicited a lot as a restaurateur in Kinston with a little bit of name. And I can honestly tell you that, you know, for me, the package that comes together is important, because it says to me that you've spent time working on this for your business. And I think you know, having an example of what a great, you know, package is in your, you know, in your line of work to get sponsors when you know, you talk with somebody and what the presentation looks like. That's a great presentation to model after, I think would be really important and separate you out from, you know, a lot of the, lack of a better term, a lot of the kind of the small town, you know, unprofessionalism.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So I would spend some time thinking about that and you know, how you want your business to look to potential businesses and what value you bring to them and really try to articulate that. I don't necessarily think for what you're doing, what it sounds like that, you know, you have to sell people on a ROI, you know, like I mean, the Boys and Girls Club, you know, does a very good job of reaching audiences for support, doing some similar things to what you're talking about. You know, to be truth be told, helping inner city kids or youth that are disadvantaged, you know, learn some practical life skills. And I think, you know, a lot of people in Eastern North Carolina, especially a lot of business owners, really value that and have a heart to help that. And I've met a lot of people who give a lot of money and a lot of time in ways that just blow me away, you know, in Eastern North Carolina. And so I think, you know, your mission sounds really, really interesting and appealing and kind of the right message for right now, you know.
Thank you, sir.
I'd say stick with it and keep trying to find that balance between, you know, what your mission is and that level of professionalism so that people can get trust in the quality of your product.
Do you have a restaurant in South Carolina?
Not, oh yeah, my wife opened up this is on her own, and it's amazing. It's called Lenore. It's in Charleston.
I have a 3-port station. So I have the local artists in North Carolina that we play, and we have a Christian station, internet station in South Carolina. And he was asking me about that. He said it was a restaurant he thought was from Kinston area that had started up down there. So I said, I think this might be the guy today.
I'm gonna brag on her for a second. She opened up this restaurant, and she told me last week there's the reservation company that we use does a top 10 hardest tables to get in the country every month, and Lenore was #1 this month of hardest tables to get. So I was just blown away, really happy for her. So cool stuff.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm gonna bring this to a close. Just so you all know, Ben is one of our mentors, so you can reach out to him separately. He'll be happy to help you. This was just a fantastic session, Ben. I think everybody learned a lot, and I think, you know, this idea of being open and honest, which goes against everything I was taught, is really an important thing for modern business. And I really appreciate you sharing the benefits that you've seen and that you've demonstrated through this effort. So thank you once again. And as usual, partner, love having you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
Dennis.
Yes, sir.
To that last thing, and this is I didn't mention this, but this kind of to what Dennis said there about open and honest, you know, putting ourselves out there on a national TV show in that way scared the living shit out of me. Not so much my wife, but it did me, because I grew up in a household that didn't trust people.
Yes, me too.
And what I've learned for me is that people are pretty nice. And if you put yourself out there, by and large, overwhelmingly, really appreciative. And you can't let the naysayers bring you down.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been a great renewal of faith in humanity for me personally, and I think helped define, what we're doing. So thank you all for having me again. It's been a pleasure.
Don't forget
Thank you.
City Art Gallery on in Greenville, Red Bank Road has Ben's show, and I posted it in the chat, the link to the show and to the City Art Gallery, as well as to Zingerman's Deli, if you have some questions about that. So, well, thanks everybody for tuning in and for making this a really special day. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
everybody.
All
See ya.
righty.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.